Good evening, coming to you live from South Knox County here on John Sevier Highway. I am here to talk to you tonight about Chapter 3, which looks at corporate social responsibility, governance, and business ethics, which is always a hot topic. You can never get enough ethics, in my opinion. In fact, many MBA programs are saying that MBA students, when they graduate, aren't getting enough training in ethical case study analysis and determining what works and doesn't work from an ethics standpoint. So this chapter takes a look at business structure, and it also looks at the shareholder versus the stakeholder model, which we're going to talk about. And finally, it wraps it up with a couple of laws that we need to be familiar with that protect us. And then we talk briefly, which we could actually spend 16 weeks in public relations and different MBA programs. We do have full-blown 16-week courses in business ethics. So let's take a look briefly at structure. Your book does a really nice job of highlighting just mainstream structures that we are familiar with. So one is the sole proprietorship. It's usually an individual who is unincorporated and they are paying taxes on their own. Another name for that is commonly known as freelancers and independent contractors. Some of you may actually be sole proprietors yourself, where you pay taxes quarterly or at the end of the year, and you run your own roost. A lot of entrepreneurs, millions of entrepreneurs here in the great United States. The second structure is partnerships, and that is when you have unincorporated businesses run by two or more individuals. So we've got limited partners as well as general partners. And then finally, we have corporations. And so many of you are probably familiar with the mainstream corporation models, such as a Walmart, such as a Kmart, such as a Google, Amazon, Apple, where employees and those of us outside of the company can buy and invest in stock. The other kind of corporation is an LLC, and that is a limited liability corporation. And that might be a smaller organization. I have several colleagues who own PR agencies here in Knoxville, and they are LLCs. So they're not as big, and they may not trade publicly, but they run a lot. They run just like a regular corporation, yet they're a little smaller. Then we move into the shareholder versus the stakeholder model. So I'm going to marry these two together when we have this discussion. So the shareholder model was developed by a gentleman named Milton Friedman, Friedman, and he was an economist. And he basically said that shareholders do not have much control over corporations, and that a company's major concern is so that these shareholders, also known as stockholders, have a healthy return on investment. So the major concern is that business is to maximize financial returns for its shareholders, otherwise known as stockholders. The other side of the coin, which is the world that we live in today, actually we live in a good balance between the two, in a hybrid, more of a hybrid situation, is the stakeholder model. And the stakeholder model was developed, or is known commonly and popularly, by a gentleman named Edward Freeman, Dr. Freeman, Freeman, and he is a business professor, university, I believe, is of Virginia, and he says that a company, in order to be responsible and to engage in good business practice, should be concerned with all stakeholders. And a stakeholder is not just a consumer. It's not just a stockholder who invests financially in the company, but it's also employees, it's other businesses, it's creditors, it's suppliers, it's distributors, it's in this case, if we were talking about Pellissippi, when we talk about employees, we talk about faculty, we talk about staff, we talk about you, of course, the student. Externally, we also would be concerned with alumni. So basically, a stakeholder is anyone who has a vested interest in the organization. And this premise is that in order to maintain a healthy business structure, organizations need to look out for all of the stakeholders. So in other words, we don't have just one stakeholder who is a stockholder, but we have many stakeholders. And that's also supported by public relations management. Couple of laws I'd like to bring your attention to. One is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, also known as the Ox Act, and that basically requires CEOs, CFOs, and any other organizational managers who are responsible for the finance of an organization to be personally responsible for their accuracy. So no longer can a company say, gee, I had no idea. So in the 70s and the 80s, that they turned a blind eye, and that took place. Ignorance is no longer bliss, thanks to the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. We also have what's called the Rule FD, and this prohibits disclosure of corporate information to certain parties. And you got it. That is basically a healthy law that makes sure that we don't have inside trading. Which prohibits anyone who gains access to material to turn around and share it so that before it goes public. This actually goes beyond the FD rule, which again, by the way, to recap, the FD rule, it prohibits any potential stock market trading. So they have to disclose what's going on financially. Finally, this particular chapter talks to you about corporate social responsibility, and we could drone on and on about how important it is to be ethical. And if you type in corporate social responsibility in either YouTube, or you just Google it, or you go into the academic journals and you go into some of the business trade journals, there's a plethora of material, of literature, YouTube videos, workshops, seminars, PhD programs, master's programs, MBA programs, undergraduate programs that are highlighting and educating us on the importance of being socially responsible. And I'm going to put up a video clip that talks about what's called the triple bottom line by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Elkington, who is an economist. And he talked about profit, he talked about planet, and he talks about people. So the 3 Ps, the triple bottom line, are the 3 basically components that make for a healthy, corporate, socially responsible company. And so your book does a good job of talking a little bit about business ethics and the penalties for breaching of these ethics. And if you Google business ethics right now, you can also get a really good example of all the different code of ethics that organizations and companies have. So you'll actually be doing that when you take a look at your corporate analysis. So that's about all I have. You're doing a good job with your discussion postings. Remember, deadline to submit is Wednesday nights by 11:30. You're welcome to work on them early. I'm going to do my best to have the next week or 2 available to you. So if you want to get started and work ahead of time on, some of you said that you work and you need to do your homework on the weekends. So then that will work out well. You can post prior to Wednesday. That's not a problem. But you do need to submit by Wednesday. And then, of course, you want to reply to 2 colleagues. Again, that can happen. If someone had already posted their initial submission on a Monday and you wanted to go in and reply to 2 of them. The beautiful thing is with D2L, you each have your own column and your own grading report. So when I go into the discussion postings each week, I can see where you've responded, when you've responded, how many words you've responded, if you've even bothered to log in at all, and also when you made your initial submission. So that's how I'm able to determine the activity that's going on within these threads each week. I wish you all a great week. And if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to email me. And we can also set up a time to Skype or FaceTime if you have an iPhone, or you're welcome to come in and talk to me the old-fashioned way, face-to-face at my office. Take care and have a great week.